So you're joining me here in orbit around Kerbin with the very catchily named rover BERT 4X Eeloo. As the name suggests, the objective of this ship is to get this particular little rover all the way out to Eeloo. Now, I'm not actually 100% sure that I've got enough fuel to do that, but we learn from our mistakes, and I make a lot of them. In the first video I mentioned that I like to try and work things out as I go along. I don't particularly like to use things like the orbit calculators and things, because to me there's a bigger sense of achievement to be able to build something to, even if it's a bit mangled, work out how to reach your destination. I get more enjoyment out of that than of using somebody else's workings out to do something exactly precisely as it should. That's just not as enjoyable for me, and I know it means that some of my designs are not particularly efficient. I know that sometimes it takes me much longer to reach places like Eeloo or Joule simply because my orbit wasn't as efficient. But you learn every step that you do, you learn a little bit more, and the next step you take is maybe a bit more efficient or a bit more hasty or what have you. So anyway, I'm in orbit around Kerbin. Now, Eeloo is a very long way out indeed. It's all the way out here, and I've already set it as a target. Not so much a problem, but one of the things with Eeloo is that not only is it a very long way away, it is also on a slightly different inclination. So you not only have to increase your velocity a great deal to match the altitude of Eeloo, you have to adjust your orbiting angle as well. So first step is I want to leave the Kerbin system. Now, it is achievable and desirable to use the moon as a slingshot to hurl yourself around moon and use the gravitational pull from that to increase your velocity to make escaping the system that much easier. But it takes practice, and it's something that I will admit I can't get right every time. So what I'm going to do is instead simply use brute force to leave the system, and we will take it from there. Now, it's important, I want to, as I'm looking at the screen, I want to leave the system heading to the right. That's because it means that as I leave the system I'm gaining orbital velocity relative to the Sun. If I was to exit out of the left of the system, I would be losing velocity relative to the Sun. So my orbit would be less, whereas if I exit to the right, my orbital apoapsis will be higher than it currently is, with the same amount of fuel burn as if I went out of the left or any other direction. So I'm going to place this node just about here, and I'm going to give it a great deal of velocity, and we can see then that I will exit straight out to the right. So all I need to do is wait a moment. I will find the blue X. It's not really an X, it's a trident cross of some kind on the nav ball. That is the angle that I need to commit my burn at. Okay, now it's not giving me an estimated burn because I haven't fired the engines. It's estimating 1 minute and 7 seconds. Now, I said in the first video that I do half of a burn before the node and half of the burn after the node. So with an estimated burn of 1 minute and 7, I'm going to initiate the burn when the node is about 33 seconds away. But I'm ready to go, so I will speed up time, bring myself down to that point. With the node 33 seconds away, I'm beginning the burn. Now obviously to leave the system there's quite a lot of delta V required, but this ship should have more than enough fuel to do that without breaking into a sweat. There we go. My target velocity is just under 2 meters per second off of what I set at the manoeuvre, but that should be absolutely fine. Now at the moment then, I will be leaving the sphere of influence of Kerbin and heading into the sphere of influence of Kerbol, the star. Now I can see that my orbit is 6 degrees off of the orbit of Eeloo. Now to make an encounter easiest, I need to try and nullify that somewhat. Now at this point, ideally the most fuel efficient place for me to meet Eeloo would be about here, because the apoapsis of my current orbit is here, and straight perpendicular to that is about here. Realistically, because this is not a perfectly timed orbit, I'm probably not actually, if I was to just start burning now, if I get there then Eeloo's not going to be there. So what I'm going to do is simply play around with a few orbital manoeuvring nodes and see if I can find an encounter. Now the best place to adjust your orbital inclination is at one of these descending or ascending nodes. So I'm just going to start off, I'm going to place a node here. The first thing I'm going to do is try to nullify, oh that's going the wrong way, try and nullify the difference in angles between our orbits. You can see now then that if I commit to this burn, I will be shifting my orbit, and once the burn is completed I will be orbiting on the same angle as Eeloo itself. But of course I'm still going to be a very long way away from where Eeloo actually is, so I need to increase my velocity as well. So I'm going to adjust that. I'm going to boost this orbit all the way up here. So at this point, this is good. We have a target, an encounter estimated. Now when I get here, Eeloo's going to be over here. So I'm not going to actually hit Eeloo at the moment, but these two encounter marks give you something to work with. If I angle this around a little bit, I can see the point changes. If I accelerate, I can see that's going to get the two markers closer. Basically at this point, having reached this suggestion of encounters, I don't know quite how to refer to them, as I can play around with the orbit. There we go. And I can see now that's actually an encounter with Joule. That's not correct. Fair enough. Right, if I continue to play around. Okay, so after having played around with the waypoints, I have managed to make a very brief encounter with Eeloo. A bit haphazard. Now, because my apoapsis goes all the way out there before coming back in towards Eeloo, it means that my orbital velocity is going to be quite a bit different to Eeloo when I actually get there. That means then that I'm going to need more fuel to slow down, and it also means that I'm going to need more fuel to reach this apoapsis. So this is not a particularly efficient encounter, but again, it's working on the idea of I want to take off and I want to try and reach my goal, as opposed to I'm going to take off and then I'm going to wait and match my flight with somebody else's calculations. That's what I'm trying to avoid. But as you can see, it's not perfect. Now, this particular node is actually 53 days away. However, I am going to find the blue cross on the nav ball. And it happens to be right there, if it can just come back. And off we go, speeding up. Let's get rid of those 53 days. Now, the estimated burn is 4 minutes and 58 seconds. The delta V to achieve this change in orbit is over 3 kilometers a second, and most of that burn is actually going to be done on the economical but not very powerful nuclear atomic engine. So that means that estimated burn is incorrect, if you like. However, in some ways, because of the length of this burn, the timing is maybe not quite as important down to the last second. So I'm gonna guess I'm gonna start the burn when there's about 4 minutes left. I know that means that the burn won't be exactly correct, but I can't accurately estimate the burn because I will be using 2 different engines throughout the burn, so I can't make one single estimate. There might well be ways to do that, but I don't know of them. I'm, as I say, a bit haphazard, and cross that bridge when we come to it kind of player. Anyway, we're closing in on the node. Bringing it down, and you know what, to heck with it, I'm going to start now. So, we begin the burn. And suddenly the burn jumps up to 9 minutes, so in actual fact starting at just over 4.5 minutes before the burn was actually, before the node, was actually quite ideal. However, I'm not going to sit here rambling for 9 minutes, so I will time up and see how we get on with that, and I will rejoin you in a minute. left of the burn. I've reduced the throttle significantly because this is where it starts to get a little bit important with your timings. Now at this point, obviously Eeloo and Joule, it seems, are going to be at quite a close encounter themselves. At the moment, if I don't adjust my velocity anymore, I'm actually going to encounter Joule, not Eeloo. But the idea of this rover was to make it all the way to Eeloo. So I'm going to carry on accelerating, make a slight course correction there. Obviously my course deviated a little bit and I need to make a correction here because the cross has moved. My velocity change was starting to increase instead of get closer, so I've just swiveled the ship around, throttling very gently. And despite being only 1 meter a second away from that target velocity, I can't actually seem to reproduce the encounter. However, I'm not going to panic. Instead, I'm going to carry on, and this time what I'm going to do is I will apparently there's a bit of a bug there, I can't click on the previous maneuver. I'm going to speed up time all the way, and I'm basically going to attempt to correct the orbit once I'm out at the apoapsis. My velocity will be a great deal slower. It will be easier to adjust my trajectory at this point, but on top of that, the physics estimations themselves will be more accurate because I'll be, about only 20% of the distance from Eeloo that I was when I was trying to do this burn down here. So I will love you and leave you for a minute, and you can rejoin me once I am at the apoapsis. So as you rejoin me, I'm a long way towards reaching Eeloo. However, partly because probably of physics estimations not being perfectly accurate, and also my burning not being completely accurate, I have actually lost the encounter. Now, they're only going to be about 2 million kilometers away from each other at that encounter, but obviously that's not close enough for orbit. What I'm going to do then, I've just taken away the time acceleration so that I can plot a maneuver here. I'm going to just play around a little bit, see if I can get that encounter back. There we go. Okay, so in 201 days I need to make a fairly small course correction, just 75 meters per second. But again, on the theme of the video that I made yesterday, if you think of the maneuver nodes as being a sat-nav as opposed to an autopilot, you can see that I've used one maneuver node to escape Kerbin, one maneuver node to bring me out almost to an encounter with Eeloo, and then a third maneuver node to actually, if you like, give me the directions to Eeloo itself. So those three things combined will lead me to get the spacecraft in a completely haphazard and unplanned manner to its destination, he says, hopefully. Whether I'll have enough fuel to actually reach orbit or not is still up for debate, but I will do my best, I will try. Now, obviously, as I reach this far out, my velocity is slowing right down, so what I'm going to do is love you and leave you again, and rejoin you when I'm near the node. So welcome back. We're now just a couple of days away from the node. As I said previously, it's only quite a small change in velocity, just 75 meters a second. Because that's so small, I'm not going to worry about burning before the node. I'll just burn when it's time for the node itself. I don't need to overthink these things all the time. Okay, and away we go, beginning the burn. There we go. The line has changed purple, and I can see that my current path I am going to hit Eeloo. So I can get rid of that maneuver now. I can speed up time again, but because of my very slow relative velocity, it's going to take me 202 days to reach that encounter. So once again, I will see you in a moment. So, as I welcome you back, Roverbert 4X Eeloo is closing in on its encounter. But just before we get back to that, I'll just point you to these two ships in the distance, one of whom, Longbert 4XB, is currently at 1.3 billion kilometers, from Kerbal, but is currently on its way back into the system, whereas its slightly younger brother, Longbert 5XB, is currently doing 20.8 kilometers per second on its way out of the system. It's at an altitude of 1.2 billion kilometers, and if it continues at that pace, it's going to get pretty high indeed. Don't know where it's going, but I guess I'll find out at some point. Anyway, back to the ship at hand. We're just about to reach the encounter. You can see that these lines do not come anywhere near to matching their paths. I mean, they're not at all parallel with each other. That means that as I enter Eeloo's sphere of influence, I'm going to be doing a vastly different speed to it. That means I need a lot of fuel to match my velocity with it, otherwise I'm going to get catapulted straight out of the system. That is probably the biggest danger of the so-called haphazard way of flying as I'm doing it here, because I've got this far, I've reached the planet, the mission elapsed time is currently 652 days, and there is a chance that I'm not going to be able to slow down enough. Now, with some practice, with some extra thought, with a bit of vague planning, even if you're still flying haphazardly, you can cut down on some of these problems quite significantly just through trial and error, learning a little bit about planet placements yourself. But the point of this video was, as I said, literally to just take off and to prove a point that you can reach places without planning, thanks to the manoeuvring nodes and their estimations. So here we go, I am in Eeloo's sphere of influence. Now I'm going to wait until I reach periapsis. Now I am actually fairly excited because I've never attempted a landing on Eeloo. There is a ship in orbit around it, but I've never once attempted to touch a vehicle down on it. So what will happen, I do not know. So now comes the moment of truth. I've just noticed this ship looks a little bit like a frog, which is a bit disconcerting. But alas. I will now begin the burn to decelerate, to slow down. As I do so, my speed, my trajectory will begin to match Eeloo's, and instead of being catapulted out of the system, if I'm able to burn for long enough, I will reach orbit around the planet. I don't know if I'll then have enough fuel to actually slow down enough to try and attempt to land the Successful or not, this burn is going to go on for a couple of minutes, so I'm going to do the time warp. Well, that's the first question answered. Yes, I do have enough fuel to slow down. I'm going to bring that periapsis right down. So there you go. I have an orbit at the moment, highly elliptical, but I'll try and circularise that once I reach the periapsis. So I'm hoping I've got enough fuel, I should do actually, to circularise this orbit with a view to initiating a landing. Of course, I don't actually know whether the design will work, because previously it's only been used to land something in atmosphere. Eeloo doesn't have an atmosphere, so parachutes don't work. And I don't actually know. The rockets fitted to this particular lander design were designed simply to help cushion any problems that the parachutes were having. They weren't designed to act as a final brake as well, so we'll see. Slowed down a little bit too much there, but that's no problem to correct. Right, well, in the spirit of haphazard flying, I am going to throw caution to the wind and begin decelerating right about here, I believe. And I'm going to attempt a landing. I have absolutely no idea what will happen. I've no idea if I have enough fuel. I have no idea if the lander will work. But hey, half the fun is just having a go. It seems that a lot of people will debate about what sort of altitude you should begin to initiate a descent. I tend to follow the sort of logic that if I seem to have a reasonable amount of fuel left in the sort of transport stage, if you like, the stage that's brought me here, I don't mind beginning a descent a little bit early, a little bit high up, because I can quite simply use some of the fuel that's left in this particular stage to slow my descent as I drop down. But let's see what happens. I would at this point be very surprised if I had enough fuel to achieve orbital velocity again. I might have just enough, I'm not sure, but at this point we're committed to attempt a landing. Just from having this haphazard attempt at landing, I've learnt, a few things that I would change and modify to this particular design to better achieve my goal. But we'll see what happens. All is not lost. At least I get to deposit several tons of debris onto Eeloo's surface, of which I'm sure there's some sort of scientific merit. Just try and keep my velocity 20 meters a second. I'm doubting whether I've actually got enough fuel in this stage to slow down sufficiently. The normal design, this was actually designed to land on Eve originally and then modified for Duna. And in place of these stabilizers up here, there were a pair of parachutes. The rover itself had a parachute as an extra component. In fact, actually, you saw that design landing on Kerbin in the previous video. I haven't tested this, so I'm quite interested to see what happens, because it's a bit of an unorthodox looking design, but sometimes they're most fun to fly. You can have a great deal of fun looking to try and replicate real world missions, but sometimes it's nice to just let your imagination run away with you and see what happens. a safe touchdown. Touchdown. Blimey, did it, and still actually a third of the fuel left on that stage, which really surprises me. I honestly thought that I was going to run out before I reached the bottom there. Now let's just see if the little rover works. Let's just decouple it. What? Oh boy. Oh, those physics are a bit strange sometimes, aren't they? Okay, now this rover was not designed to do a wheelie non-stop. Let's see if its legs can straighten it out. No. Okay. This could pose a problem. See, this is where I'm wishing I'd just turned the video off a moment ago. Whoa, that was not what I intended to have happen at all. Oh boy. Oh, that's... What's going to happen? Is it going to roll over? Is it going to roll over? Yes, stay upright, stay upright, yes. I'm going to lie and pretend that that was entirely intentional. Clearly it wasn't. Anyway, not quite from start to finish because you didn't see the takeoff, but from Kerbin's orbit we have reached Eeloo with no forward planning whatsoever, and we have successfully orbited Eeloo and successfully landed on Eeloo. And little rover Bert 4X is free now to carry out as many experiments as it wishes. And to have a jolly good time as it does so. And it looks like it has a little face, which is very happy. So there you go. Good luck.